Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching the Today I Found Out YouTube channel, and in the video today we're looking at the story of Hatshepsut, the bearded female king of Egypt who was erased from history. Hatshepsut was the eldest of two daughters born to Egyptian king Thutmose I and Queen Ahmose Nefertari. Her younger sister died in infancy, meaning 12-year-old Hatshepsut was Thutmose I's only surviving child from his marriage to the queen. However, Thutmose I, unlike other Egyptian pharaohs, maintained secondary wives, also known as harem wives. Any sons born to those relationships could rise to the position of pharaoh should the king and queen be unable to produce a male heir. So the position of pharaoh skipped Hatshepsut and instead went to her half-brother Thutmose II. She still came to power as the queen of Egypt when she married her half-brother at the age of 12. The marriage served a vital purpose of establishing Thutmose II's legitimacy as king. Being the son of Thutmose I's harem wife was only one of his problems. Hatshepsut's grandfather failed to father any male heirs as well, so Thutmose I became king after marrying into the royal family, further diminishing Thutmose II's claim to the throne. But by marrying his sister, it helped solidify his link with the line of royals. Engravings from Thutmose II's reign appeared to show Hatshepsut performing the role of a dutiful queen. Though the union failed to produce a son, their only child was a daughter named Nefertari. So when Thutmose II died shortly after taking over, his son from a harem wife became the next pharaoh. Except there was a catch. Thutmose III was only an infant at the time of his father's death and was much too young to ascend to the throne. Hatshepsut stepped up to the handle of the business of running the Egyptian government as regent for her stepson-nephew. She did not break new ground in that regard, as widowed queens often served as regent when their male heir was not old enough to rule the country. Engravings illustrating their relationship for the first few years appeared to show a similar scene to those of Thutmose II's rule, Hatshepsut standing beside Thutmose III as he performed his duties as pharaoh. Then, at some point during the first 7 years of Thutmose III's reign, Hatshepsut took the unprecedented step and declared herself pharaoh and co-ruler with Thutmose III. Women had previously been pharaohs, and there was no law explicitly forbidding her from holding the position. However, those other female pharaohs only assumed the position when no male heirs existed in the royal family. Thutmose III was very much alive. Previously, Egyptologists attributed her decision to take over as simple ambition and desire for power. However, more recently, this idea has largely been dismissed, and her takeover is thought to have been about protecting Thutmose III's throne, which he may have had a tenuous hold over for similar reasons to his father. It is theorized that a political crisis might have forced her to take on the role of king or risk Thutmose III losing his position for good. The evidence appears to back up this theory, as Hatshepsut could have easily have ordered Thutmose III's death while pharaoh, ridding her of anyone who had as good a claim to the throne as herself. Instead, she made sure he received a top-notch education typically reserved for scribes and priests, creating something of a future scholar king. Later, Thutmose III joined the military. After he had gained some experience and proved himself worthy, Hatshepsut ultimately named Thutmose III the supreme commander of her armies. In this position, had he so chosen, he could have relatively easily overthrown her, but he made no such move. It would appear the pair were on good terms and comfortable in their respective positions. All evidence seems to indicate that she was raising him to be the next pharaoh, and that she did a really great job of it. He would prove himself to be one of history's great pharaohs, in his case both in administration and in battle strategy, and he's since been called the Napoleon of ancient Europe. In any event, once the decision was made, Hatshepsut worked quickly to solidify her position as pharaoh. She had herself partly portrayed as a man in engravings and sculpture. In addition to this, she also wore clothes worn by male pharaohs and also wore the traditional false pharaoh beard. She also invented a story to justify her ascension to the throne. Illustrations at her mortuary temple tell the story that her father, Thutmose I, wanted her to become pharaoh. Another illustration claims the god Ammon took on the appearance of Thutmose I and appeared to her mother the night Hatshepsut was conceived. He supposedly even instructed the Egyptian god of creation, Khnum, to go to fashion her better than all gods, shape for me this daughter whom I have begotten. The stories must have been convincing, or else Hatshepsut cultivated the right friendships among government officials, as she ruled over Egypt for about 2 decades, much longer than most pharaohs managed. During this time, Egypt enjoyed relative peace and great prosperity. Using the excess, she oversaw grandiose construction projects throughout her kingdom, being one of the most prolific of all pharaohs at instituting such projects, both in number and scale. She also orchestrated significant trade with a land called Punt, as well as cultivated many other trade networks in Egypt's benefit. Historians believe that Hatshepsut died around the year 1458 BC. Based on studying her body, it is generally thought she died of either complications due to diabetes or bone cancer. Now, whatever the case, upon her death, Thutmose I ascended to the position of pharaoh. As mentioned, he now presided over an Egypt that had prospered greatly under Hatshepsut's rule. However, about 2 decades into his reign, for reasons unclear today, he began ordering his men to remove all mentions of Hatshepsut as pharaoh. Her name and image were destroyed, scraped from engravings, and her statues toppled. No easy task, considering the numerous buildings and other works built under her rule, often featuring her in some way on them. It was originally speculated that he did this out of anger for her usurping his throne earlier in his life. However, given that about 2 decades passed before he bothered, and the seemingly good relationship the pair had during her rule, as commander of Egypt's armies and the rightful heir, he could have overthrown her with little difficulty had he really wanted to. It's today theorized that this act was probably more about legitimizing his own son's rule. It's even possible his son, Ahmose II, was the one who ordered all of this. Thutmose III was getting up in years at around this time, and Ahmose II had become co-regents around the time Hatshepsut began to be erased from history. It is also known that Ahmose II did attempt to take credit for many of the things that Hatshepsut had already accomplished. Whatever the case, most of Hatshepsut's life was successfully removed from the history books until the 19th century, when her story was uncovered in surviving works, starting with the texts on some temple walls. It was later discovered that even Hatshepsut worried about how she, a female pharaoh, would be remembered, or even if she'd be remembered at all. One of her obelisks at Karnak contains the following translated text. Now my heart turns this way and that, as I think what the people will say. Those who see my monuments in years to come, and who shall speak of what I have done. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already for brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also, over there on the right are a couple of other videos that you might enjoy if you enjoyed this one, and thank you for watching.